People say there is a first time for everything. A first kiss, your first car, the unrequited first love. However, what does this mean in the grand scope of things? Are firsts more monumental because they are the first, or do we get better with practice? Do we remember our first as more important than they actually were, holding on to that magical moment as a mark of our past and future selves? Do our firsts outshine what comes next? On A First Time for Everything, we will explore with our guests their firsts and how those impacted the seconds, thirds, and even countless times after. Is the first the best or merely the beginning? Or worse, was the first the last because it was so bad? We will dig into the recesses of our memories and consider whether or not a first was the start of something amazing or something we'd rather not remember. Come along with me, Juliet Rose, as I put our guests in the hot seat to analyze their firsts and how they defined who they became. I promise you're in for a fun, although maybe bumpy ride. Speaking of bumpy rides, welcome to another episode of First Time for Everything. I think every episode we've had so far this season has had some weird thing going on. And also, Joe, I'm just going to reach out to you. I'm getting a thing saying that the Facebook stream was deleted, so I'm not sure if that's running or not, but I'll just send that over to Joe and hopefully we're good. So I am your host, Juliet Rose. And tonight I'm talking to Nicole Givens Kurtz, who we've met a few times, I think at Multiverse and some other places. So I was very excited to chat with you tonight. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
So I am Nicole Givens Kurtz. I'm the owner of Mocha Memoirs Press, which is an HWA Specialty Press Award winner for 2025. I am also an anime lover, a dog mom, a boy mom, 3 sons. And I really love cyberpunk noir. I love mysteries. I love thrillers. And so I tend to like dark sci-fi and horror.
Nice. Very cool. Right up my alley too. So yeah, that's really cool. So I know you and I have met a few times, I think, in passing. But tell me a little bit about your writing per se. And I've seen your stuff and I know that you've done, I think at the time I was in Multiverse the first year, maybe you had something on Susan Ronnie's table.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I have really random memories of things. So I think that's the first time I ever kind of like connected your name with you.
Yeah.
So I know you have the Mocha Memoirs Press, and then how much do you have published right now for yourself and then for kind of through the press?
So the press currently has 17 authors and I think 53 at last count titles. We have great 17 authors, but 53 titles. Our authors tend to write a lot of series. And so we have authors with multiple books. Marie Wood being the queen of multiple books. She has, I think we have her entire backlist. Which is already by itself, that's like 12 to 15 titles. So yeah, we do a lot of my own titles. I think I have 3 ongoing series and I have like 15 novels, a couple of short story collections, and like 50 plus short story publications. So yeah.
Wow. So here's a question I kind of have, because I'm always a little bit curious about this when I talk to people that kind of, run both sides of kind of publishing and writing, being a writer, but also publishing. What do you find is the biggest challenge with doing that? And do you find it takes away from your own ability to be creative, or does it help?
So time is always an issue because I have a day job, right? So there's that. I mentioned before I was a dog and a boy mom. So there's that also. But there are times where the needs of the press, right, or the needs of my authors come before what I'm doing.
Right.
And it is a tricky balance, right? So there are ways some of the ways I mitigate that or balance is I have certain days where I do certain things. There are certain days for me, they're Nicole the author, and there are certain days for the press. Or there are certain times during that day for the press, and there are certain days for me. So that's just kind of how it goes. I was a teacher for 20 years, so I'm used to writing in sprints, right? So I can't, because, when you're teaching, you can write during hall pass or during lunch, but it's very brief. And so I've become really good at, it's now part of my writing technique to write things in scenes or write things as they come to me on a piece of paper or in my Samsung note. Right. And then go back later when I have a larger amount of time and kind of put those things together. So I'm used to being able to stop the flow, basically, go to something else and then come back to it later, which helps because there are things that pop up with publishing where I have to stop. Go address this issue, right? And then try to come back and pick it up.
Yeah, for sure. That's because I do some publishing is what I do more like the anthologies, and I work with a couple authors. But it's such a challenge to really find that balance to say, okay, now it's my time. And that's like really, I feel like that's always like now the last kind of like thing on the radar. But it's important, right, to keep feeding your soul, because otherwise you can't really keep feeding everybody else's soul. So you got to be creative to do that arm too. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. So
True.
I get that. Now I had a question. I know that you won an award. Was it for the press specifically?
It was for the press. Yeah.
Okay, so talk a little bit about that, because I'm very, very impressed. So,
so that came out of left field. Horror Writers Association gave us an award for specialty press for our contribution to the horror genre. I guess over the last, Mocha has been in business, like we started July of 2010. So we're not a new press. We may be new to others, but the press itself is already 15 years old.
Nice.
And so during that time, I think our very first horror anthology was like the first year we were out, the first 18 months. So we've always been a horror heavy or horror top heavy press. But we used to do anthologies to help celebrate Women in Horror Month, because our press mission statement has continuously been to amplify marginalized voices in speculative fiction. And that includes horror, science fiction, and fantasy, where in terms of horror, we focus on women and Black women specifically, but horror, some guy got on Twitter and said, women don't write horror.
Oh my gosh.
Hence, we're gonna talk about Women in Horror Month was born, right? To kind of raise the awareness and evangelize the fact that women do write horror.
Yes.
This was like, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe. And then it became a yearly thing every February. And then it moved to March. And now it's just, right, it did its job. We still celebrate Women in Horror Month in March. But yeah, there's no there's no group there used to be a group that would mandate that, but there isn't anymore. It's getting pieced out to everyone, basically, to kind of continue the evangelizing of women in horror. I'm part of a group of Black women who write horror, and there are like 160 of us. So
wow, that's awesome.
It's growing, right? So, but yeah, that's the award. The award was for our press's contributions.
That's amazing. I mean, that is amazing. And when I heard about that, I was like, yes, that's amazing. I just want to post what Anita said. Most of the horror authors I know are women. And I think that's a really good topic to talk about, because I think I'm also a woman horror author. I think it's really important to like kind of look at maybe some of that mindset towards women being horror authors. And like you said, that was 20 years ago. You know, a couple of years ago, I literally heard a man say, "Oh, I'd never read a woman horror author. They're not good at it," which blew my mind a little bit. But it's interesting that we are still really fighting that battle.
Oh, yes.
For genre. Like,
yes.
It's a story. It's words on a paper. Like, I promise you, my vagina is not going to get in the way of that. Like, I can write horror and you'd be a woman. So when you come across that, when you really deal with that, and especially when you have maybe women who are horror authors that are concerned about that, how do you really address that?
You mean with other people who say women don't write horror?
Yeah, and even women who might be like, well, I'm afraid that, I won't be taken seriously, or should I use initials, or, all the things that come along with being a woman horror author.
Well, I remind them that, a 17-year-old girl kicked off 2 genres, both a horror genre and a sci-fi genre, and to not be afraid of it, right? That horror has many looks, and it's something that's kind of prevalent in every genre, because we all have things we fear, And so I kind of, when I teach horror, and I'll be teaching a horror writing class for Writer's Digest on the 18th of
Nice.
October. It's my second time teaching that. But when I teach horror, I talk about how fear kind of permeates everything, because we all have stuff we're afraid of. And so I know, being a Gen X kid, most people kind of associate in horror with slasher films, right?
Yeah.
Or Stephen King type of stuff. But I think I will say that horror for women tends to look a little bit different.
It does.
And you can see that when you read women's work. One of my favorite horror stories is Zen Rockland's Flowers for the Sea, which talks about, it's kind of cosmic horror-ish, but the protagonist is pregnant, and it's during a time where not many people can be pregnant, and she's stuck on a boat because the whole, it's like Snowpiercer in the sense that the world has gone to hell in a handcart, and the only livable space is on this boat. And the protagonist is pregnant, and the way she talks about the horror of being pregnant, this parasite that's eating away at her insides and taking her nutrition and taking her bones. Like, it's very much a women-centric horror story that I don't see a man writing about that eloquently or that well. And so I think that this is an example of how women's approach to horror can be very different. And so if a woman says, I don't think it's for me, I don't think I could write it, okay, that's fine. But if you want to write it and you're afraid because you're a woman that you won't be taken seriously, come on. I mean, we can start naming people who are awesome at writing. Wow. Shirley Jackson, right? Octavia Butler did some horror, Tanner Nadu. Like, we can start talking about that horror doesn't have one singular look or feel or theme, and that women have so much to bring to that table and have.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Yeah, because I'm reading the and of course now I can't think. I think it's the end of the world as we know. It's the new Stephen King, anthology. Writers. And I've been reading that, and one of the things I found is like how incredibly beautifully brutal women can really be. And that's like their stories are like so far so much more brutal than the men's stories. And I was just like, I love that, because like you kind of forget in reading it, like you forget gender. And I think you should, to a degree, because you should just be absorbed into that story. This story is just, kind of tearing me apart. But I read the first story and I went, okay, right, like this is some of the most brutal, gory stuff I've read, but in a good way. Like it was done so well and weaved so well. Like there was character development. Like I felt like, it mattered what I was reading. And that's the thing I have to say is I think there's this mindset that women are going to be soft. And like, I'm a quiet horror writer, so I get it. I do write creepy, atmospheric. But I've also read women horror authors that go completely to the extreme. You're like, and you're like, your eyes are bugging out of your head.
I would encourage them to read like anthologies that are by women, have stories that are written by women, not men writing women, women writing women, or even I would encourage them to read that, so they can get a feel and be able to see the breadth and diversity of the stories that we tell that are horrific. Like read Eden Royce, read Sumiko Salson, read a lot of people who are diverse and are not male. Exactly. So you get an idea that, look, it's wide open. It's the story you want to tell.
Yeah. It's about the brain. And then Anita said some excellent current women horror authors are Angela Yuriko Smith, Lee Murray, Mercedes and Yardley. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, there are really a lot of incredible ones.
Yeah, Lee Murray for sure. Oh
yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is like ultimately read the book, like read the story. Don't worry about who wrote it.
Don't worry about it. Tell your story your way. And I think that's kind of the important part too. When I talk to new writers, it's like, but my stories already been done before. Sure, it's never been done by you. And that's the difference, right? It's your perspective, it's your lived experience, it's you writing it that brings a different take on storytelling and on the story you want to tell. So
I think that's valid. Perspective is the right word. It really is about perspective.
Yes.
Because the same story, more or less could be told by 5
Can be.
different people and get 5 different stories out of it, because it is about perspective. So, to keep that in mind. So what do you think about the initials thing? Because I've had people ask me, well, you don't use your initials. Does that, is it a detriment? I can't say whether or not it's a detriment. I don't know. But I know that a lot of women authors are still leaning towards those initials because of that. What is your take on that? Do you encourage it, discourage it? Do you just kind of go, yeah, whatever makes you happy?
That, right? Yeah. Because everyone's writer journey is different. So I was a teacher for a long time. And so there were I wrote under a pen name because I was a teacher.
Right.
And so there's reasons why people use a pen name, why people use, and those reasons are unique to them. I would never tell someone, you must use your real name, or you must not use a pen name, or your pen name can't be this. I did have an agent once tell me that my writing name, which is Nicole Givens Kurtz, was too long. And that because it was 3 words, it automatically told the reader I was an amateur. I was like, really? I'm pretty sure I can find it. It was just a very stunning statement. I'm like, you haven't read anything I've written. But yeah, that's what I was told.
And it's amazing because I can think of how many authors I know that have 3 names, and I know them all. They're just because they're good writers. Yeah, that's all that matters. So interesting.
That was interesting. Yeah, I was like, that's an interesting take on author names, but okay.
It's amazing how many people have in their mind opinions that they think are rules. Like, you should do this, or you shouldn't do this, or this is how this should be. I remember one time someone said, I don't think when I have my website, or if I use on Facebook and have author Juliet Rose, if you use the word author in front of it, then you're not professional. I was like, well, okay, let's try how that plays into it. But this person was absolutely she was almost angry about it. She was like, if you do this, you should just use an initial. And I was like, I think I'm good, but thank you, for your input that I didn't have.
Yeah, I don't know why they're mad.
Why are you so mad? Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about you now, because I'm actually curious about your writing journey. So obviously, you've been doing the press and you've been kind of involved in this for years. What was the first point in your life that you really felt like you knew you wanted to be a writer?
Oh gosh, I've been a writer my whole life though. But so I remember before I could actually write out sentences, when I would watch TV, and then my mom, I was an only child for 7 years. Before my brother came and ruined it. So I would go to bed, and I'm a horrible insomniac. That's been since I was a kid as well. I would continue that story in my imagination after whatever television program I finished watching before bed, until I fell asleep. So I was already writing stories, and I didn't do baby dolls. I did Barbies. And so me and my Barbies had wonderful stories. Oh, the drama. So I was writing, creating stories before I could write sentences and stories, but I didn't realize I could actually get paid for it until I was in high school. I was in 9th grade, and the area school district had a writing contest. And it was essay writing contest. And my English teacher then was like, hey, do you want to enter this? You're always writing in your journal. I think you'd be good. So we wrote something. I wrote something, and then I submitted it, and it won. And I got money, and I got my picture in the paper. And I was just like, district-wide? Y'all gonna pay me to write stuff? Okay. So
that's awesome.
That's when I realized that being a writer actually money should flow to the writer. I knew that when I was 15.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the first time I was like, wait, I can do this? Because you got to remember, the people making money from novel writing were white men. I didn't see a lot of me on the New York Times bestseller list. So when I was 14, 15, right? So when you think about it, it was kind of stunning, right? For me to realize, it was kind of really? They pay people for this? And I knew writers got paid, but I never saw writers like me get paid.
Right.
And so that was a huge, huge turning point in my my trajectory for what I want to do with my life was computers. And then it's like,
yeah, that's interesting. And I know you said you were a teacher. So like, did you, like what I did, like I always knew I wanted to write, right? But I always like kind of put it as this back burner thing. Like I would do it and I would sometimes submit stuff, but like in my mind, that wasn't going to be my career. My career was going to be whatever I went to school for. And, you know, that was going to be something that I would do on the side. And maybe one day I would do more. Did you kind of feel that way? And like, did you pursue a different career for that reason? Or did you want to pursue writing full time and just didn't? Like, how did you kind of end up choosing a career path, you know?
So my bachelor's degree is actually in writing. Like my undergrad is in writing. I did something foolish. I met a guy, I married a guy, and
I did that thing too.
And when it was just me, right? There's kind of two things that happened in tandem. I was working and going to school for writing. And when I graduated, I got promoted at my job. Right. So, and I got promoted and relocated to Chicago. And so now I'm working for a corporate office. I'm doing training, corporate training. And it's kind of like, well, I want to be a writer full time, but this is a job that pays really well. And I have a roof over my head, right? So it kind of like spiraled from there. It never was a break. So I got like headhunted and then moved to San Diego, right? For this basically the same position, but a different company. And again, yeah, no one's working writing full time and getting paid in San Diego. It's super expensive. So that was out. So there was just a lot of things that kept me from saying, okay, I'm going to be a full-time writer until the pandemic hit. And then I was like, oh, I got laid off. And I was like, for the first time in my life, I got laid off. And I was like, hey, I can write full time. Yeah, no. No, the money doesn't come in. Like at this point, I'm 45. Yeah. The writing full time, the way that I think in the last 30 years, it's changed so much, right? Yeah. Big advances aren't given to just everybody, right? You got to be like already have or presented a really large readership in order to get that. And so I don't have that. Not to the level that they want at a New York house or one of the big five. So,
yeah. So it's interesting because like it's somewhat similar to my own path, and you know, also being a mother played into that, you know, in time and what I was willing to dedicate my time to. And there was a point where I actually didn't write for like 15 years, like because I had little kids and I got divorced and I was working and trying to keep a roof over our heads. And like, I'd always say, you know, my current husband now, he would be like, why don't you write anymore? And I'd be like, I don't have time. My brain doesn't have the headspace. I could never really explain that to people. It's like, even if I have time, like say I'm sitting here on the couch, my brain does not have the capacity right now to write. And it really took, same thing. It was kind of during COVID for me, it was my 50th birthday. I went now or never, like, dude, like, I'm not going to live forever. If I want to do this, I have to do this. And the kids were grown. So like, I felt like I had that headspace back, but it really took like that moment of like, how am I going to, like, I had to lay out a plan to make myself do it. Cause I knew otherwise everything would always get in the way. Right. How did you go about doing that? Like, how did you shift gears to be like, nope, I need to really focus in on this and make it important?
So did I mention I'm an insomniac?
Oh yeah, you did.
So I would often write after the boys were asleep. And I would write, I don't need a lot of sleep. And so I say that and then my body's like, yes, you do.
Your body's like,
it catches up with me, right? You know, but until it catches up with me, because I'm running in front of it, right? 3 hours. I would do that. I would write at night after the boys went to bed at like 9. So I would write from like 9 to midnight and then get up at 6 and be at my school by 7, and then teach all day. And then, yeah. And that was what was really interesting about teaching is it's really emotional work. I don't think people who aren't teachers don't really understand just how emotionally draining teaching is, right? They think, oh, you just stay in the room and talk to kids. Well, no, that's what your teacher did. That's not what today's kids need, like at all, not even remotely. They don't like to be lectured. So just standing up there and telling them stuff they can Google and get information for it doesn't work. And so there's other things. Teaching is a very different animal than when I was in school, many thousands of years ago. So, so I would write. That's what I would do. I would just try to write. And when the boys got older, when they got involved in sports, when they got involved in acting and ballet and all the things that they did, I would find time to write, while they're recess or at halftime or whatever. And I told you I got really good at writing in pieces. Because every available moment I try to write. And if the muse said, hey, here's an idea right now, I would write it on a napkin, on a receipt, stick it in my purse. So I had a bunch of receipts and flying all over the place, right? And then I would lay them all out and try to make them a story and connect them and write the connecting pieces, right? And so that's what I did. When the boys were young, when the boys got older, now they're all out of the house and grown. So now it's easier. Yeah. But you're right. There are days when my brain is just mushy.
Yeah.
It's I don't have the capacity to conjure any type of thing.
No, if I wrote on those days, it would be utter garbage. I'd just be like,
that also Which is why I'm very glad that I have a notebook, and I go back to the notebook when I'm like, I can't do anything. There are days where I need to write. It's right there. I can feel it. It's like knowing you have to go to the bathroom, you can't go. It's a lot of pressure. You're like, I gotta write something. I need to write something. But my brain is like, ideas. What are those? I go to my notebook and I'll look at the pieces of papers that I have, or the notes that I've taken and put there, or to help come up with something that I can play with.
I love that. And then Anita said, yeah, mushy brain is a thing. It really
Totally.
is. It really is. I try to explain it because people say, oh, do you have and I do have a writing schedule to a degree, but I know there's days, I just know that there's days and I'm driving home and I'm like, yeah, today's not going to be the day that I write. Because I can just feel it. If I can even focus on a television show, that's going to be amazing. Because at that point, my brain's just tapped out. My brain's like, yeah, I've done everything I'm going to do today. I'm a librarian, but I also do the tech side of it. So I'm guest facing tech. So some days the amount of questions I get asked just use up every bit of brain that I've had in that day.
I understand that, having been a teacher. Exactly. Questions.
And so I think taking the guilt out of it, I don't feel guilty. Nope, I'm just going to go home. And if I don't write, I don't write. And I feel like my writing's better because of that. Because when I do write, I'm wanting to, I'm engaged. Kind of like you're talking about being a teacher. I worked with preschoolers for years. I used to run preschools, and we'd always say when a child's engaged, they're going to learn more. You got to make sure they're interested. Sure. Get them engaged. Well, that's the same for us. We've got to
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's so true.
Now, are you still a teacher?
No.
Oh, you're not.
I now work for a software company where I look at screens all day and manage projects. So
is that better?
So you can imagine that I don't write my stories on the computer because I'm sick of looking at the screen. But at the end of the day, I write. I write longhand. I always have. Which is why I'm a slow writer. Yeah. But I write longhand.
That is so impressive. I tried to write. Honestly, I wouldn't be able to read what I wrote. I'd be like, what did this say? Butter. I don't know.
I also have that problem occasionally. Wait, what did I mean here?
I feel like you should do the talk to text. I'm like, have you heard me talk? It'd be the same thing. So yeah, we're good. Really so let's talk about your first book then. So when you decided, okay, I'm going to do this, and you kind of sat down to write a book. What was your first book? When did you write it? And what did you learn from that process?
Oh, wow. The first book should have been a chunk novel. It should have never seen the light of day, ever. The people who the publishing company, I should have known, right? When the publishing company that gave me the first contract for it in 98, not for Silence, but for a book called I Will Not Name You. Because I don't want people to go out on the internet trying to find copies of it. It was horrible. But I got a digital contract. It was my first publishing contract. This is like I said, it's 98. So this is where, ebook readers were like the size of like printers. They were just like this huge piece of so way back in the way back. But they were gone. Like they had folded within 4 months of accepting the work. So luckily, I found another publisher in Canada. Double Dragon took it. They took the book after that, and that series, like in 2001, 2002. But right around when Silence, ironically enough, is not the first book in the series. I wrote an entire novel that takes place before Silence, but no one liked it. I wrote Silence instead. And they got
it says up. First in series.
So it's the first in the series, but there's a whole nother novel that takes place before Silence that you'll never ever see. So
that's hilarious.
But it was a good training novel because I got to hammer out and kind of learn Cybil's voice and more about the world in that first novel that you will never ever ever see.
Yeah.
Like there are rules in my will that you don't publish things that I have not finished or things that I have. If it's not already out there, don't publish it. But yeah, Silence is the first in the series. I absolutely love cyberpunk. I'm a huge cyberpunk fan. I'm a big fan of Philip K. Dick. I am a big fan of Richard K. Morgan's Altered Carbon series. I found Altered Carbon in a used bookstore in a random city on my way moving from New Mexico to North Carolina. Okay. And I just randomly picked it up. And it was Altered Carbon, which is the first book in the series of Kovacs. And I absolutely loved it. But Silence had already come out by then. And so had Cozen, the second one, right? So but I love like Blade Runner. And like I said, I'm a big Philip K. Dick fan. I also am a big Sue Grafton fan and Robert B. Parker fan, Lawrence Sanders fan. Like I love mysteries. And I love noir. The problem I have is that noir doesn't have anyone that looks like me. And I don't like their femme fatale. So Silence is like my subversion of the genre of noir, and also like my celebration of cyberpunk. Even though it's all high tech, low life, they're always very gritty and dark. I like to put hope in, explore what it means to be human when there's so much technology both outside and inside your body.
Yeah, I like that combination too. I do. Like that's really kind of what draws me in. Oh, and let's see. And Anita says Robert Parker's one of her favorites. Yeah, he's amazing. I mean, before I forget, Joe, I think we should have a show that we read from our actual first novels, like the ones we say no one can read, and we have to read from it. We each have to take a
first novel. I don't know what you mean.
I have one too. Trust me, like Do-Over is not my first novel. My first one's now out of print. So yeah, but I would happily read from it because I think it's hilarious. So yeah, like when they do the celebrities do the like reviews, people like leave the reviews about them and they're terrible and they have to read them. I think we should have to do that. I think it'd be funny.
Yeah. You love cyberpunk movies. I also love cyberpunk movies. So in genre, I'm also a big anime fan, so there's a ton of cyberpunk anime I could probably recommend. But for books, they tend to be very white and male. Which is also why I wrote Silence, because it has a Black female protagonist. And she's also not alone. Like you always see the loner in the noir, it's the lone guy.
Right, yeah.
But what I loved about Spencer is that Spencer wasn't a lonely detective PI. He had Hawk, he had Quark, he had a lot of other people in his Susanna. He had a lot of people in his circle. And I always found that to be more realistic than just a lone single detective, right? Because they always need someone. No one does anything alone, not really.
Right.
So she has, I also want to represent like a Black woman relationship that is not antagonistic. Because this, at the time I was writing Silence, there was a lot of shows where Black women were fighting, like on the reality shows, like Real
Right.
Housewives and stuff like that. They were not depicting Black women in it's just one light. Right? It's like, really? Oh, I'd like to show that A, we're not all like that, and B, we got each other's back when I want to show a healthy relationship. And that's what Jane and Cybil have. It's kind of like older sister, little sister, because there's some teasing that goes on between them, but they care about each other deeply. And so I wanted to depict that as well. So there's a lot of subversion of tropes and stereotypes in Silence, both for cyberpunk and for women.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting because earlier you mentioned Octavia Butler, who's like my favorite writer. But I will say I didn't even know who that was until one day, and this is probably maybe 7 years ago. I was driving home and NPR was talking about Octavia Butler. And they were talking about her being, this, Black woman sci-fi writer in the 60s and getting the 70s, and how like she really had to fight against a lot of barriers to write what she did. And like she actually kind of blew up. I mean, more people know her now. That's why people talk about her now than like then. And so, which is like heartbreaking because she is an amazing writer. I'm not kidding. She's like my queen, like my favorite like writer. And I'm so bummed I will never get to meet her. But knowing that, like looking back at women that have basically had to kind of break through those barriers, and yourself now, what kind of barriers are you trying to break down? How do you do it? I know. None. There's none out there.
No barriers.
and I liked what you said about kind of like presenting a character in a different light. What are some other ways that you feel like you can reach out to readers and get them to, I guess, think differently so that you're getting that larger readership of people? I know, big questions.
That's like 10 questions, right?
I know, it is. But it's a train of thought. So welcome to the train of thought.
So I actually had the opportunity to meet Octavia Butler back in 2006. There was an event in Seattle called Black to the Future.
That's awesome.
And I actually had an opportunity to meet her, Stephen Barnes, Tanner Nadeau. I already knew Nettie Okafor, but I got to see her again when we were all in Seattle for an event. And I was really like super excited. Because really, talk about breaking down barriers. I don't think I break down barriers at all, but I have had people come up to the table and tell me, right? I have had authors tell me that I saw you at a panel at a sci-fi con. I thought, wow, I could write sci-fi too. There's a Black woman also writing. It kind of, they said, I can do this because you did this first. Right. And I'm like, I actually didn't do it first, but so I think if I'm breaking any barriers, it's just by writing what I love, unflinchingly. But my press also does a lot of work towards amplifying voices that wouldn't automatically be heard or wouldn't pass the gatekeepers, right?
Right.
I recently wrote a blog about the still very small percentage of diverse books that are published, and now you have an assault or a ban on diverse books.
Yep.
And it just it's more important. The work that MoCA does and other independent presses do in terms of amplifying those marginalized voices is more important now than it was when I started the press 15 years ago. Yeah. At that time, I just wanted to add more visibility, right? Because I wanted people to understand and see Black people, brown folks in the future and on covers, and right. Because it wasn't just great representation for other African Americans, it's also a great representation for everyone else to be able to look and be like, wait a minute, is that a Black person in an astronaut suit? Yes. You know what? That actually happened in real life several times. So that kind of stuff, right? It's like my press work's really hard to do that. That's the work that we do, right? We take those stories that wouldn't pass a gatekeeper, or it has a niche market, or they're gay and Black, or they're trans and Black, or they're non-binary and Latino. We're not going to publish that. We will take your story if it's a good enough story. We're always looking for good stories. Don't misunderstand me. But your identity doesn't bar us from publishing you.
Right.
Unless you're racist, then no.
Well, that's, and it should. Well,
if that's all your identity, no, don't send us anything.
Yeah.
Please.
It's interesting that you said like now versus 15 years ago. And obviously, I think for all of us, or most of us that are currently alive and within our age and younger even, we're living in a time that I don't think we ever thought was going to come back. Like, I didn't think we were going to cycle back to, the current regime and what they're trying to do. So as a writer, I often have to sit and question myself and say, at this point, am I pushing harder or am I pulling back? What am I doing? Obviously, I'm going to push harder because that's just my personality type. But I think there's a lot of question. Like, a lot of people are kind of living within this like kind of fear cycle at this time of am I putting myself at risk? Am I putting other people at risk by pushing, these particular ideas out into the world when they're very openly being spoken about in a negative way, being threatened with arrests, things like that. Really, I don't really have a question except for how do you feel about that, or how do you kind of wake up in the morning and decide how you're going to address that in this current hellhole that we're in? I don't know how else to put it.
I don't know how to say this, Juliet, but I've been Black my whole life. So for me, this isn't new. Right. It's a little more intense. It's a little more out in the open. But for me, it's never been gone. Right. I've always been followed when I go into stores. I've always been super nervous when I get pulled over by cops. It's something that as an African American, I've always lived with. So for me, this is just the usual Tuesday. With the exception of them, like there's always a fear in the Black community that your loved one won't come home because the police have snatched them up off the street for no reason. So for me, this is everyday life. Is it stressful? Yes. Is it horrible? Absolutely. What I do when I get up in the morning, my sons are all grown, so I have 3 Black male sons running around in Texas and in Arizona. And they check in. I send proof of life. I need to see that you're okay. We talk about how to remain safe. But what I do to not kind of melt into despair is, I look at what I have. I am opposing them. Right. I refuse to be bowed. I refuse to be unhappy. I refuse to be afraid. Because that's what they want. Right. They want you to hush. They want you to shut up. They want to be dominant. And they want their ideas to be prolific. And no, I'm going to push back against that. I'm going to live against that. Right. I'm living proof that what you're saying about African Americans is incorrect. Yeah. So that's how I get up in the morning. I tell my husband I love him. I tell my mom I love her. And will I see them tomorrow? Will they come take me tonight? I don't know. Right. So I live every day to its absolute fullest. But I've been doing that since I was born. Yeah. Since a guy at a convenience store wouldn't touch my hands because I was Black. So he gave me my change back on the counter and scooted it toward me. I was 6. Wow. So how much of a threat could I be at 6 years old? I was cute. I don't understand it.
You're still cute. Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's interesting because my oldest child is trans, and that's something that, it's always been a concern. I have 2 LGBTQ children, and we've always had these conversations of, who you speak to, how you speak about it, where you go, watch your back, always have a buddy. I mean, these ridiculous things. However, now it's this thing where it's like, now you could be illegal. So, you have to be, And I never want to tell, and I'm sure you know, I never want to tell my kids not to speak up for themselves or not to be who they are. But at the same point, I want them to be alive. And so there's like that thing of trying to balance those two, right? Like we have to, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure you know, but like, that's the thing is like finding the ability to stand up and speak out, but also stay alive.
Also know that, like, right. So for everyone, it's your comfort level, right? Like if your act of resistance is, I woke up this morning and I pushed through, and I didn't succumb to fear, right? Okay, keep going, right? I don't want to tell anyone that you must do this or you must do that. And my sons will be like, "Mom, I got this." I know.
That's my kids. They're like, "Yeah, Mom, I got it." I'm like, test. Don't worry about it. I'm like.
I still see you as a 3-year-old. You don't have it, right? You don't got this.
Yeah.
I see my 2-year-old baby with his bottle going, I got this, Mom. And he's like 21 now. And I'm like, no, baby, you don't have it.
Yeah. But you can't tell him, right? Like you can't tell him. Fine, I get it,
But it's hard, it's tough. But, I have a good support system. I have a great writing circle of friends. So we check in on each other a lot. We go do things. We still go out. We still do things.
Yeah.
But like I said, I've been Black my whole life. So I've never been really careless with how I do things anyway. Right. So those things just continue to be in practice. And as a woman too, like there are things women don't do, right? You don't wait till you get to your car to take your keys out.
No, yeah.
You don't sit in your car with your doors unlocked. You don't lower. So all those things, right, that as a woman to protect yourself, and as a Black woman, you still do those things. Those things are still in play.
Yeah.
You don't have any opportunity really to let that guard down. Maybe a few years ago we could relax a little, but no.
Yeah. And especially, I mean, I don't know, where do you live currently?
South Carolina.
Okay, girl. Yeah. I'm Georgia. Yeah. So yeah. So that
Georgia, so you know.
Right. We got that covered. We didn't even talk about that. So I'm from New York though. So like it was a big eye opener for me when I moved, and my ex-husband's military, so we lived all over, but really like settling in the South and I had lived in North Carolina as a child in the 70s and like the 80s, but then coming back to Georgia as an adult and seeing, Georgia. So how it was definitely a shock. I mean, like the North isn't exactly the same. Like there are definitely differences. Like I never saw a Confederate flag in the back of a truck or a noose in the back of a truck until I moved to the town that I live in now. And I was like, wow, that's like terrifying. Like the fact that people can openly just be like, this is who we are. And this is, you just have to live with it.
Well, I'm originally from East Tennessee, so.
Oh, so yeah. I'm like,
Dollywood, Smoky Mountains, Springboard.
Yeah.
That's right in the backyard, literally. So.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you being forthright about that, because I think these are conversations that need to happen. It's kind of why I brought up, I know that things are how they are, because like I said, I'm just seeing it around. But at the same point, I think it needs to be a conversation. I think it needs to be said and had and not be uncomfortable, because I think that right now people really want to shut people up. And that's imperative not to happen. And that's what I'm saying when you're talking to my kids and I'm saying, I want you to talk, but at the same point, like have a buddy and carry a taser, whatever it is, like just to do that. But I think that is the truth, is we need to have these conversations. We need to be honest about our experiences. And I appreciate you being honest about those experiences, because people need to hear it, because we need to not be shut up. And I think that's, as writers, we have that amazing tool of being able to write it down, and I love that, because I feel like in that we have like kind of like a platform that if you're just trying to tell somebody something, they shut you down. But when you create a story and you weave it into this fiction tale and you create this likable character, this relatable character, all of a sudden people's minds hopefully open up a little, And do you find, do you get people that come up to you and say like, hey, I read that and that really made me think differently or open my mind? Or do you ever get responses from people like that?
I don't have any fans. What do you mean? I do have people say things like, I never saw an ace character represented before in a story, and they were super excited about it.
Nice.
It's in Kill Three Birds, which is a fantasy mystery. You'll notice a theme here: mystery, mystery, mystery.
Yeah.
And so I have people I've had people send me snippets from either Kill Three Birds or from Silence. Sometimes and they'll be like, "Oh, this passage right here really spoke to me," right? Or they'll call it out in a review. And so those are things that are really cool to see. At least some parts of the story resonate. You got to remember that Silence is set in 2046 after the fall of the United States.
Oh, wow.
And it's set in the district, which is the District of Columbia, and each territory has their own governing style. And so the district, which is where DC is its own territory. It's annexed a few spaces beyond the District of Columbia, but it is just this huge metropolitan area that has its own governing body. Which I find it interesting because I wrote this in 2006.
Oh, wow.
And as I'm 04, 05, right? So I'm looking at the world going, wow, California is its own territory in my book. And Silence is its own territory. It's called the Cali province. And so it's its own independent country, basically. And so there's a bunch of chunked up territories, and you can't travel to all of them. Some of them are friendly, some are not friendly. Some have a king and a monarchy. Some of them don't have that. They have a democracy. Some have a fascist state. So just depends on where you want to go. But the country is no longer united. And I always find that very interesting as I look back now going, wow.
Yeah, you might have
I am no prophet, but I nailed that.
I don't know, you might have nailed it. Yeah, that definitely sounds like I have to read that now. Because that's totally what I love to read. So yeah. I mean, and it's, like when I read Octavia Butler's, Parable of the Star, Parable of Town.
Oh, yes.
Part of you's just like, this is so, she was seeing into the future, and then you're like, oh my God, she was seeing into the future. Like this.
Right. She totally nailed so much stuff. Oh, it's so prophetic.
It's pretty scary, actually. Yeah. But it sounds like you were doing the same thing. So I have to read that now. So yeah.
No, I've read those too. Yeah, no. It was spot on. It is super scary, that insight that she had into how we function as a country, but also human nature.
For sure. Yeah. Her books to me, I mean, people always ask, hands on my favorite. Just, she just nailed it. So, but yeah, I need to check out Silence because it sounds like a lot like what I like to read. Although it sounds terrifying too. So, to a degree.
There is there are mysteries. It says it in the title, in the subtitle, right? They're mysteries. They're whodunits for the most part.
Right.
But there's a lot that goes on politically. There's a lot of things that go on in terms of class. Again, what does it mean to be a human being when there's so much tech around you and in you? And so when does that humanity leave? Where does it start? Where does it end? Yeah. You become inhuman by your actions, or are you inhuman by the devices that work in your body to keep you alive? It's all that kind of stuff that runs kind of in the background of all of the Cybil Lewis stories. But yeah, that's kind of the things I like to talk about and play with: class, race, identity.
Yeah, I'm going to read those for sure. That's now I know when my next read's going to be. So that's really good. It's just stuff I love. So are you going to be at Multiverse this year?
I am not.
You're not. Me either. I actually double booked and I missed out, so I'm not going to be there. So
I actually have another engagement as well. So.
Yeah. All right. So why don't you let people know where you are going to be over the next, whatever, for the rest of the year, what kind of events you're doing.
Okay. So I'll be at Villains Con in Rock Hill, South Carolina on October 31st, November 1st. I will be at the Geekery Market in November.
Oh, yeah.
It's the 15th. You were there last year.
I was there. I'm not going to be there this year. It was a longer drive than I was expecting. So, yeah.
For a one-day event, right?
Yeah. I was like,
So I'll be at the Geekery in November, and in December, I should be at Charlotte Comic Con. But you can totally find me. I'm on a blog tour this week for the latest release of it's another Cybil Lewis book called Fabricated. And so you can enter to win a $20 gift card. If you are on my website, or go to goddessfish.com, you can see where I'm going to be. It's like a 15-stop tour. and you get to read excerpts and learn about Cybil and learn more about me.
Very cool. Very cool. I know which books I'm going to be looking for after we're done here. I appreciate you coming on, and everybody that tuned in tonight. We really appreciate this. And I know this was live, but it will be available to watch after tonight as well for anybody that might have missed out. And I really appreciate you coming on. I was actually looking forward to chatting with you because, I've always kind of admired you from afar.
We're actually getting to talk, right?
I know.
Usually like just passing each other
I just,
in the night.
But thank you so much for hopping on and having a chat. And I hope to see you again soon. I know we don't really cross paths too often, but we're not that far. So, maybe we will. And thank you, everybody tuned in. And just remember, it's always time for Go Indie Now. And we will see you again next week. And I need to play the outro. So bye, y'all.